There has been quite a bit of debates, unfortunately, locally, that what we are experiencing is not climate change, but climate variability.
Climate change, according to me, is a change in weather patterns affecting the natural ecosystem, and that's in terms of agriculture, resulting in affecting our targeted crop production.
And the causatives that our use of energy will change our weather patterns.
To me, climate change is self-explanatory.
Climate change is sort of when the weather patterns in a particular area, change in intensity, either for the worst or for the better.
Generally, for Southern Africa, if I take our region, for instance, basically the whole of sub-Saharan Africa is predominantly agro-based. Most of our economies are based on agriculture. And much of that agriculture is dryland agriculture. And I think from the 2007 report, it was evident, or it came out, that there's going to be a reduction in the amount of rainfall that the region is going to be receiving. It might be less rainfall in terms of volume, or the distribution might be so poor, right, such that we have torrents at one time, or we have very little of it at one point, to the overall effect that cropping might be negatively affected. And the moment that agriculture is negatively affected, then that means most of the economies within the region are already going to be facing some problems, because we rely on dryland agriculture. Opportunities for irrigated agriculture within the different countries of the region are much, much less, far, far less than overall those that are relying on dryland agriculture. So that is going to be the sharpest or the largest effect that we are going to have: droughts.
As scientists in the country associate climate change with a change in weather patterns, people living in rural communities are talking about the changes according to their observations.
Sihlezi sikhuluma nje noma izulu lithwala kalisathwali njengakudala wabona lithi bhaca amayezi seliphonguza njengani ngumkhizo lanxa liphazima izulu lalisithi khathesi sowusitha ngani ibhayisikopho ukuphazima kwalo kuyasimangalisa khona kwasikwazi ukuthi kwenziwa yini
konke kwakukhona isibili inyamazana zazikhona kodwa kade zazisekho zingake ziqambe ukuthi iziphi ngoba vele inyamazana zenivele zinjani kakusela nyamazana izihlahla ziningi sibili lapha kule zihlahla ezinjengamachabela usokwabi asesele wanwani safa basemaningi zibala kulo leli lizwe sokulandela amaminyela kade izindawo sehamba amaminyela ihlahla uthi aliminyela lalo selisifa ngahamba kwambe emindaweni zokuyathola ngelifileyo kuphela ngelifileyo la ukuthi avulawa yini awula umuntu angakutshela labe lingakhanyilwanga kumbe ikuma phansi ngabona
vula yedu yataiwana isipali undulino lati pano pati siyotoona kuti nzvimbo kuda kusiyana kwamakore kana kuti munoti revolution kufamba kwenyika tizosiyana ndizvodiba
mukanzwa yadzochema dzakunwa mvura yemumhango hatinwe murwisika inonwa mango miti mikuru
yezvina dzambochema kana kana nyenzi chaiyo hafuna yakagara kutozwa kwakuti zizvese zvinyerere.
Zimbabwe, like most African countries, is an agro-based economy. 70% of the population is dependent on rain-fed agriculture for a livelihood, with 45% of these being women. Thus, any slight change in rainfall patterns endangers the food security of approximately 8 million Zimbabweans. Such has been the case over the past 10 years, where socio-economic factors coupled with unpredictable rainfall patterns have left many people food insecure. The 2010-2011 season is one such season. Though January 2011 was declared one of the wettest in history, the prolonged dry spell in February ruined all hopes of a good harvest.
The yields, they were very low. Some did not even harvest anything because we received quite a lot of rainfall, but the rain fell only in January, and that was the end. So the crop, when the crop could not mature because there was no rainfall. So we went, some farmers didn't even harvest a wheelbarrow of maize.
The problem for Chirugwi actually is, does not lie in the decrease of rainfall. The problem for Chirugwi lies in the extremes. It's an area that generally receives a lot of rainfall as compared to other parts of the country. And for instance, one season it might receive 1,400 millimeters of rainfall. The next season it receives 500 millimeters of rainfall. On average, it receives a lot of rainfall, but the variability is quite huge. And then it means that planning becomes very difficult, especially for people who are into rain-fed agriculture, for example.
The effects of changing seasonal patterns are felt even by champion smallholder farmers, who earned their name because they observe good agricultural practices. In a good season, they will harvest twice as much as ordinary farmers. One such farmer is Mrs. Chinyati, a widow who proudly showed off her Master Farmer certificate, telling how she earned it from Agritech by practicing crop spacing and other such methods that helped obtain a good harvest with enough rainfall.
Kana mvura yanyatsonaya zvakanaka ndinotombokuwa matani anosvika kuma 5 kana 6. Tozoenda nekuti mvura inenge yakamira sei. Asi kazhinji semazuva ano andave ndogawa ndinoita chero 4, 2, gore rakaperawo ndakaita 2 nekuda kwemvura nekuda kwemvura isina kutiitira zvakanaka. Noti drought kana yauya inenge yobata zvose mombe nevanhu. Saka idambudziko rokuti unogona kurasikirwa nezvipfuwo, unogona kushayiwa futi kukohwa kuminda.
Mrs. Chinyati has managed to raise all her 8 children through proceeds from her farm produce. She employed shrewd business practices, such as buying clothes and utensils from towns nearby to pay people who work in her field with it. When she lost some of her cattle to thieves, she tried to get the rest insured, but failed to meet the insurance company's requirements.
Nokuti ndave ndine shungu yokuti dai ndaisa hangu ng'ombe dzangu zviri nani kuti ndiomegwe ndichibhadhara mari yeinsurance. Asi kana paita problem seyandakaita last year but one yokuti ng'ombe 8 dzinoenda musi umwe, unogona kuclaima ng'ombe dzacho ukadzorerwa hako chero 4 zviri nani.
She also tried to access a loan to repair the grinding mill she used to crush stover for her cattle. The community is aware of the changing climate and is trying to adapt, and in fact would succeed if they receive the required assistance.
One message that we keep getting from the communities that we are working with is that they are fed up with food handouts. They really want to do things for themselves. And they are aware that the environment in which they are farming has changed. And they are also aware that they cannot continue to do business as usual. They are really quite aware. But they feel they're not getting adequate assistance. And the assistance that they really need, in most cases, they want knowledge, first and foremost. And then they also need access to inputs on time. They also need credit facilities just like anyone else, but at reasonable rates, rates that are mindful of their situation.
With the unpredictable changes in weather patterns, the community finds it hard to rely on their traditional ways of predicting weather because their usual reference points and traditional knowledge are slowly disappearing.
Weather iyi yavakuita iyo forecast yanga irikovo kuvakuru kungovona kuti nhasi vuma hwakaita sei, ndiyo andoti vuma ndiyo andingati kuchirumbi weather.
Lezulu wakulezulu okuthiwa ngole inzala kuzoba lani lezulu okuthiwa imbolisa amahlanga hayi mabili amazulu angikhona. Kade sikakuseyeka akho nje lelodwa lisekho, kuyivini imbolisa amahlanga ayisekho. ngoba liyazilini kade zilingana ngokuthi iminyaka eminingi ivangumani okutoba.
Makarekare mvura yainayo, makarekare mvura yainetsa, yaiti ikanetsa vakuru vedu voenda kwagirini kwambuya vodzoka zonzi chishanu chipiri hamurime uye itai mikwerero. Bhuku nebhuku raiita mukwerero, saka norukoto tozopuhwa mvura. Pari zvino mvura iri kutinetsa. Chikonzero chiri kutinetsa ndechekuti vana vedu hamuchadi zvataita kudhara, maakuda zvechirungu, hamuchadi mikwerero, maakuti aiwa tava apostori.
Of all the districts visited, that is Chikomba, Shirugwi and Lupane, the community members pointed out access to water as the major challenge they face. Discussions about freshwater availability increasingly focus on water security, which refers to the people's access to enough safe and affordable water to satisfy their needs for household use, food production and livelihoods.
In communal areas, if the people don't have enough water, the poverty is on the upscale. It reaches much higher levels if they don't have water. So water is very important for people in the district. And we have major challenges in the communal parts of the district because of the water shortages. People are dependent on water to water their gardens, so they have moved into the rivers. They've in fact infested the rivers.
The food supply situation in Zimbabwe has deteriorated significantly in recent years. The country has been facing socio-economic decline since 2000, a vulnerability compounded by the aggravated impacts of climate change, such as drought, low crop performance, and limited irrigation.
From the analysis, or from the primary analysis that we have done so far, yes, we can conclusively say that the climate is changing. We are witnessing quite a decrease, a rapid decrease in the amount of rainfall that Zimbabwe as a country is receiving. When I say Zimbabwe as a country, I mean the national average for Zimbabwe.
The effects of climate change will be felt in various ways across gender and age groups. Women produce the food even though they do not often own the means of production. Climate change is predicted to add on to the challenges they face on their daily activities. The youth, on the other hand, are able-bodied and help with fetching water, firewood, and other such household chores. With dry conditions to come, they will have to walk longer distances to perform these tasks.
Pari zvino tichitarisa pachisina asi pane mwaka wokuti unochengeta mvura zvikuru tichibva muna April up to June umbwa wapera mvura. Saka ringi radambudziko kwatiri isu kupa zvinhu zvirimwa zvese zvatinenge tinazvo zvatanjisenzesa mugodhi wedu tichidiridza zvirimwa izvozvo. Saka tinenge taakufamba chinhambwe chinoita kilomita tichienda kunoteka mvura ukoko.
Only 2.5% of the 1.4 billion cubic kilometers of water on Earth is fresh water fit for human consumption, and most of this is inaccessible. Nearly 70% is locked up in glaciers, snow, and ice. In Africa, higher temperatures, increased evaporation, and lower rainfall have combined to reduce water flow by up to 40% in many major rivers and caused recurrent droughts. Our greatest source of fresh water is the 8 million cubic kilometers of groundwater, with only 0.3% of fresh water being found in rivers, streams, and lakes. However, there is need for innovative ways of tapping into this water reserve in a way that does not put more strain on the available resources. The use of solar energy is one such way.
I believe we can tap the increasing temperatures into an advantage, because rainfall is directly related to cloud. So when you have decreasing rainfall, you also have a corresponding decrease in the amount of cloud that we have. The decreasing amount of cloud, which means we have more sunshine hours, which means we have the capacity to produce more energy from solar, which means we can tap this into an advantage. For example, when you have decreasing rainfall in Lupane and you have less amount of cloud, we can tap that, and then you have a lot of solar energy projects that can actually be used to tap water from underground.
As the Swedish Cooperative Center, there are a number of projects within our Farmers Fighting Poverty program, which we have been implementing to contribute to adaptation to climate change. We have come in with solar as an alternative technology that can be used to abstract the water, to pump it into an overhead tank, and then it can be channeled into the garden to ensure that the water is close to the proximity of the farmer's plot, right? Instead of the farmer having to walk long distances to go and fetch the water, bring it back to the crop. Now we've tried to bring the water as close as we can, taking advantage of the position of the tank into which this solar-powered pump is pushing the water. The reason why we settled for solar was because we wanted to look at a system that was not going to increase the carbon dioxide load into the atmosphere, right? We're looking at environment or climate-friendly technologies which were possibly cheap to maintain, efficient, and which were also going to lessen the toil or the burden that would be used in terms of actually ensuring that the water was applied into the garden. What we wanted from this system was that it would also be maintenance-free to a large extent.
Swedish Cooperative Center introduced the Farmers Fighting Poverty project, which is successfully running at 10 sites in Lupane, Shirugwi, and Chikomba districts. Each harvest fetches an average of $50 per farmer. Each solar pump has a daily capacity of 10,000 liters and also services schools, clinics, and the community at large. One beneficiary in Lupane, Mrs. Margaret Nube, who is married and has 4 children, says she manages to complement her food supply with produce from the garden. She grows maize and sells baskets to Lupane Women's Center.
kube lo mbhida ngiyabe ngakhethi ukuthi ngithengisa ngemali njengoba kulezi suku imali yahlupha ngiyathengisa la ngamabele izinto ziyathengwa noma uhawukela ukuthi uthengisa uyathenga la ngamabele nxa silimile umbhida waba mningi siyababuya be-women center bezosincedisa bezothwala amabhandi siyabe sibazile ukuthi ubani lungesini amabhandi amangako ubani lungesa amabhandi amangako.
In Chikomba, 23-year-old Fanuel hopes to make enough money from the garden plot he manages with his mother to study building and bricklaying in a vocational college. For now, he helps his father, who is a builder. The beneficiaries in Chikomba have plans to get their produce to the market and feel they could increase their production levels with an additional water tank.
Hopefully, I think as time goes by, we will manage to sell our products in bulk because the marketing committee has already started to go into the city areas to sell our things.
Taking care of the environment is much more about culture and people's attitudes to need as opposed to greed. With a good legislative and regulatory framework and a collective effort towards sustainable development, coping with climate change will be an achievable objective. When the change in global temperatures rises by more than 2 degrees Celsius, scientists predict that an estimated 2 billion people will be affected by water shortages. It is expected that Zimbabwe will be water-stressed by 2025. Thus, it is up to us to effectively use the resources available now and to develop innovative and holistic solutions. Solutions that embrace both indigenous and modern techniques to adapt and mitigate the effects of this global phenomenon, climate change.